Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. When you sent in this CNA piece about navigating friendships with wealth gaps,
Mhm.
I was really intrigued. It's one of those things, you kind of feel like you should talk about,
Mhm.
but it can get a little awkward.
For sure.
So how do you actually keep those friendships strong when everyone's bank account's telling a different story?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's such a fascinating dynamic to explore because money often becomes this unspoken factor that really shapes how we connect and interact with each other. Even those little things like deciding where to eat can suddenly become a little bit loaded.
Like, where do we go?
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And this article starts out with this great story about a guy named Keith Lim. He's a research consultant, and he has this friend group that's always suggesting, these fancy steak dinners,
Mm.
places he just can't swing.
Yeah.
So his response is, he just blurts out, some of us are poor.
I love that. It's like using humor as a way to kind of diffuse the tension.
Totally. But he admits later that even though it was a joke, it did point to this underlying discomfort he felt.
Right.
And the article goes on to talk about how, these unaddressed wealth gaps can really mess with the dynamics of a friendship.
Absolutely. And it often boils down to something that psychologists call subconscious benchmarking.
Okay, but I love when we get to break down some psych terms.
Right.
So subconscious benchmarking, what is that all about?
Well, it's really rooted in social comparison theory, which is this idea that we as humans are constantly assessing our own self-worth based on how we measure up against those around us.
Okay.
So in friendships where there's a significant income disparity,
Yeah.
it's really easy for someone to start feeling inadequate or like they don't
Yeah.
belong, even if no one's intentionally making them feel that way.
Oh, I can totally see that. Like you're scrolling through social media and everyone's, posting pics from these amazing trips or showing off their new gadgets.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there feeling like you're stuck in place, barely making rent.
Yeah, exactly. And that can create this sense of keeping up with the Joneses pressure, which can lead to people feeling like they need to overspend just to fit in.
Yeah, there's a part in the article where Keith talks about a previous friendship that actually ended because of this.
Mm.
His friend just, kind of brushed off his financial concerns, like making him feel like he was overreacting or being too sensitive.
Oh, that's a classic example of how these things, when they're not addressed or talked about, can actually fester and lead to resentment over time.
It's so interesting, too. The article even mentions this thing called unintentional bragging,
Oh, yeah.
where a friend might be, you know, super excited about their new car or a fancy vacation, but totally oblivious to how it might make someone else feel.
It's so true. And I think it's a really tough situation to navigate because on the one hand, you want to be genuinely happy for your friend.
Right.
But on the other hand, you might be battling these feelings of envy or a sense of being left behind.
Totally. Like you don't want to come across as bitter or
Yeah.
jealous. So you just
Yeah.
kind of bottle it up.
Exactly. And that's where things can start to become problematic because it's like this elephant in the room that everyone's trying to ignore.
Geez, how do you tackle this?
Yeah.
How do you address these money issues without completely, ruining the friendship?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? Well, the experts in the article, they really stress the importance of open and honest communication,
Mhm.
but with a healthy dose of empathy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do you actually start that conversation? I feel like that could be so awkward.
Oh, totally. It can be super awkward, but sometimes just acknowledging the difference can make a world of difference.
Right.
You could say something like, hey, I know we all have different budgets, so let's just be mindful of that when we're planning things.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
It kind of sets the tone without
exactly.
singling anybody out.
It doesn't put anyone on the spot.
Right.
Yeah.
The article also had this anecdote about this group of friends who went on vacation together,
Right.
but some of them flew business class and others were stuck in economy.
Oof. Yeah.
I can totally see how a situation like that could create some tension.
Absolutely. And it really highlights this importance of reading the room.
Yeah.
Paying attention to those subtle cues that someone might be feeling a little bit uncomfortable or excluded.
Okay, so how do you do that? What are some of those signs to look out for?
Well, someone might become really withdrawn or quiet when you're discussing plans. Or they might start making excuses to avoid certain activities that they know are going to be expensive.
Right. It's those little
Like those subtle things that we don't always pick up on.
Right.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's crucial to be proactive and actually check in with your friends.
Yeah.
Especially if you notice a change in their behavior. You could say something like, hey, is everything okay? You seem a bit quiet.
Right. It's about creating that space where everyone feels comfortable enough to speak up
Exactly.
about their concerns
Right.
without feeling judged.
Yeah. And it's not just about being sensitive to others, it's also about being honest about your own, financial limitations.
Right. If your friends are suggesting a Michelin star restaurant and you're living on ramen noodles,
Yeah.
it's okay to say,
Right.
hey, that's a bit out of my price range right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
You can say, could we maybe explore some other options?
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how often your friends are actually really understanding and willing to compromise.
Right.
Yeah.
So the experts also had some really good tips for managing group expenses fairly.
Uh-huh.
What about taking turns paying for meals?
Oh, that's a great one. It definitely takes the pressure off any one person,
Hmm.
and it promotes the sense of reciprocity within the group.
It's interesting because that reciprocity thing isn't just about like fairness. It's actually tapping into something kind of deeper psychologically.
Oh, absolutely. When we do something nice for someone, it triggers this like subconscious desire for them to reciprocate.
Okay.
So it actually strengthens the bond between people.
So even if it's not like a tit for tat thing,
Hmm.
these small acts of giving and receiving actually help to solidify the friendship.
Exactly, right. It's about building a culture of mutual support where everyone feels valued and appreciated regardless of their financial contributions.
I like that. So the article also touched on the idea of like offering financial help, but in a way that's respectful and doesn't make anyone feel obligated.
Yes, that can be a tricky one. It's about finding that right balance.
Yeah.
If you genuinely want to help a friend out, maybe offer to cover their share for an activity, but make it clear that there are no strings attached.
Right. And maybe even phrase it in a way that kind of emphasizes the shared experience. Like,
Yes.
hey, I'd love for you to come.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be the same without you. Let me cover you this time.
Exactly. It's about emphasizing the value of their presence rather than highlighting their financial limitations.
Right. And you know what? Remember Keith, our steak dinner dodging friend.
Uh,
The article talked about how he and his friends from national service would bond over board games instead of,
mm.
going out to these fancy dinners.
I love that. What a great example. It just reminds us that the foundation of any strong friendship really lies in those shared experiences and that genuine connection, not in like how much money is spent.
It's about finding ways to have fun and create memories together without putting that financial pressure on anyone.
Right. And that can be as simple as having potluck dinners, movie nights at home, or exploring those free activities that are happening in your city.
Right.
There are so many options out there.
Yeah, and if we circle back to that idea of unintentional bragging,
Yeah.
how do you deal with the friend who just seems kind of oblivious to how their extravagant spending might be making other people feel?
Well, I think the key here is honesty, but delivered with compassion.
Yeah.
Remember, your friend might genuinely have no idea that they're making you uncomfortable.
Right.
So approach the conversation from a place of wanting to preserve the friendship.
Okay, so what kind of language could you use?
You could say something like, hey, I know you're super excited about your new whatever it is,
Uh-huh.
and I'm really happy for you, but honestly, I've been feeling a bit sensitive about money lately.
Okay.
Could we maybe talk about something else for now?
I like that. It's honest, it sets a boundary,
Yeah,
but it's not making them feel like they've done something wrong.
exactly. It avoids placing blame, and it's really about finding a way to communicate your needs without accusing or being judgmental.
Uh-huh.
You can even add something like, I really value our time together, and I just want to make sure we're both comfortable.
Right. That emphasizes the importance of the friendship itself,
Exactly.
which is ultimately what matters.
Absolutely. And sometimes just having that open and honest conversation can be a huge relief for both parties.
Right.
It clears the air and it allows you to move forward with a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives.
So what I'm hearing is that when it comes to navigating these wealth gaps in friendships, it's all about communication, empathy, and remembering that the true value of friendship isn't measured in dollars and cents.
Beautifully put. And that's something I think that's so important to remember no matter what your financial situation is.
It's funny because this whole conversation about Keith and his friends got me thinking about like times I've felt that same kind of awkwardness around money in my own friend groups. You
No,
know?
absolutely. I think it's way more common than people realize.
Yeah.
And just like talking about it openly, like this is such a great first step to kind of breaking down those barriers.
Totally. And this deep dive has given us so many practical tips for handling those situations that come up.
Sure.
I love that the article stressed the importance of setting those boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, agreeing on a budget beforehand or being upfront about what you can and can't afford.
Hmm. Absolutely. It's all about finding that sweet spot where everyone feels comfortable and no one's being pressured or feeling like they have to overspend to keep up.
Right. And getting creative too.
Yes.
Like instead of always going out to a fancy restaurants,
Right.
maybe you suggest a potluck dinner at someone's place.
Exactly.
Or like exploring some free events that are happening around town.
There are so many ways to have fun and connect without breaking the bank. It
Right.
just requires a little bit of thought and planning.
This deep dive has been such a good reminder that like the heart of friendship really lies in those shared experiences, the laughter, the support, the memories we create together.
It's the simple things.
And none of that requires like a hefty price tag.
Absolutely not.
So to our amazing listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
Think about your own friend groups.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that unspoken tension around money?
Mm-hmm.
What are some creative ways that you found to just enjoy each other's company without that stress of overspending?
We want to know. Share your stories with us. We're all in this together. Figuring out how to nurture those precious friendships regardless of those financial differences.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, genuine connection and that shared joy that's priceless.
Couldn't agree more.
That's what truly enriches our lives.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing and those friendships strong.